Welcome to the Moffitt Method Podcast, where longtime strength and conditioning coach Tommy Moffitt explores everything from the art of coaching, improving performance, sports nutrition, and mental training. Now, welcome your host, Coach Tommy Moffitt.
Welcome to the Moffitt Method Podcast, and I am your host, Tommy Moffitt. If you are listening for the first time, please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast and share it with your friends. For more information about the Moffitt Method speed, strength, and conditioning programs for teams, schools, sport organizations, and our brand new one-to-one remote coaching program, visit our website at themoffittmethod.fit or email us at info@themoffittmethod.fit. Our informative guest today is Coach Mike Chatman. Coach Chatman enters his fifth season as the sports performance coach for the men's basketball team at Stanford University. Coach Chatman had previously served as the assistant athletic director of strength and conditioning at Towson University, and prior to that was the assistant director of strength and conditioning at Southern Mississippi, where he served as the men's basketball director of performance. Coach Chatman managed the strength and conditioning staff and programs at Towson and worked primarily with the men's basketball and volleyball teams, along with men's and women's golf. Prior to his appointment at Southern Miss, Coach Chatman worked at the University of Michigan, the University of Texas, and Penn State University. Coach Chatman has also served at Southeastern University in Hammond, Louisiana, as the head strength and conditioning coach for men's basketball. He began his professional career at Southern University right here in Baton Rouge, where he was an intern and assistant strength and conditioning coach for basketball, football, and track and field. Welcome to the podcast, Coach. How are we doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate that. This is going to be a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to talking some basketball with you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so let's get started with how you got into the field of strength and conditioning, and who were some of your early influences, and then how did you end up specializing in men's basketball?
Yeah, well, so I had a really interesting kind of deal where I wasn't even really sure strength conditioning was a thing. And somewhere along the way, I got really interested in it. I played basketball, wasn't good enough. So, try to find everything you can to make it advanced, try to maximize your abilities or what have you. And so I sent out somewhere between 75 and 90 emails to people. And Frank Bourgeois, responded to me of everyone and referred me to Coach Hatch. And so when I got to Coach Hatch, I was there for a little while. I was there for like 2 months. He's like, "You're going to be a strength coach." He told me. I was like, I didn't really know what it was, to be honest. I was like, cool. I don't it works for me. And that's kind of my first peek into the world of what it was like. I think that intern class, we came and watched you guys train one day. Yeah. And y'all were cranking the diesel on the field one day. And I fell in love with it. And I was like, this is what I want to do. So yeah, that's kind of like my intro into it. And from there, it's just kind of, there's a long heritage of strength coaches that have been in Louisiana and come through that area. Yeah. And so there's a lot of people I've been able to connect with through that family that's really helped me out and really helped me grow.
Mm-hmm. All right. So how did you, where was Frank Bourgeois?
Midwestern
State? Yeah. The chief. That's the big chief right there.
Yeah, for sure. Frank and Jeff Earls. Jeff Earls is like my big brother. And those dudes mean the world to me because early on I didn't really know what I was doing. So like my first time being in the college weight room was actually in your weight room, seeing it for the first time. Then I went on I worked with Emil Gant and Barry Gant for a little while. Yeah. And then that's when I kind of start rolling from there.
Yeah. So you replaced, I think, and this is more of a question, but did you replace Jeff Earls at Coach Hatch's?
I did.
When Jeff left?
Yes, sir, I did.
Yeah.
Big shoes.
Yeah, big shoes. So I was So I was with Matt Bruce earlier today. Matt and
Yeah.
I are partners in the Moffitt Method. So we were shooting videos, and I told him that I was doing the podcast with you today. So Matt told me to tell you hello because he remembers you from your time at Coach Hatch's.
Absolutely. Matt's a great dude.
Yeah.
Great dude. Good days back there. Lots of learning. Lots of
Yeah.
things that I learned from Matt that I didn't know I was learning at the time, you know?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
All right, well, good. Well, let's get right into the nuts and bolts about basketball. I'm excited about talking to you about, all the stuff that you do with Stanford. So, first of all, can you just talk about your overall approach to programming for the sport of basketball?
Yeah. I think throughout my career, I've gotten to work with a ton of sports. And, obviously starting out, you want to be like the football guy or the basketball guy. And I was kind of really fortunate and blessed to have to be the everything guy.
Yeah.
And so it gave me a really good understanding of human movement. My first full-time job was actually doing ice hockey, which I had never really seen or watched before. So a lot of what I do with basketball really comes down to the human movement piece.
Yeah.
Like I really believe in loading movements, and I kind of the term strengthening your sphere is really important to me. So you got to get strong on the sagittal plane, but you get to the end ranges of your transverse and your frontal plane. Can you go there, be safe, be strong, be able to load and explode in and out of those positions? So when I think about strengthening that sphere, and with a basketball player, it could be going for a rebound in a big reach, maybe it's a receiver going for a catch. When you look at sport, it's all a series of dynamic lunges and squats in different positions. How do I load those in the right time, the right places to make sure I maximize their abilities and make them durable? And people get into the movement piece. He kind of loses its kind of gusto. People think you gotta get big and strong, and I like to say like we're a bunch of movement meatheads. We want to get big and strong, but we want to move great. And those are two things that I think are super important because I truly believe strength and durability go hand in hand.
Yeah. All right. So when you talk about loaded movement,
Mhm.
how do you go about doing that? And like what type of drills and distances do those drills cover?
Yeah, so I will try to do everything in like different planes, so frontal, sagittal, transverse. But the end range of where we reach it kind of really, really varies throughout. So like we could do an in range pickup to where maybe we have a 30-pound med ball, we take a lunge out and we reach as far as we can with that med ball and put it out and then push back into it. And so that's not a position that you can be really crazy strong at like with a barbell. But when you think about sport and how you think about when motion hits stillness, injury occurs. If I want to create some in-range strength to get there, maybe I go really far. Maybe some doing return to play, or maybe athletes it's not as stable. It's a little bit
Right.
shorter. So kind of the athlete's ability and what they can do dictates how far and where we're going to go. And like the goal is to maybe start them in closer and work them out further and then
Right.
be able to add load. And once you add load, now I'm adding load with speed. And so it kind of goes to a progression of how fast, how much. And that really kind of goes to be able to control your body while absorbing and producing forces.
Okay. So I got it now. So, and then would you include jumps with this also?
Absolutely. So we may do uh, vertical jump, land, lateral, then frontal. So like if you could jump, so imagine we're doing a matrix. We're going to jump off two, land on one, jump off two, land on one forward, jump off two, land on to the side, jump off two and rotating. So now we're adding different forces into it. Every time that foot hits the ground because of the different forces, the foot has to do a different type of thing, acclimate to what's going on. So it kind of get a little more robust system, which I think if you think about the term of functional density, we're getting a lot done for that body, really attacking the foot, also getting plyometric, a little force absorption and force production. And that's kind of a way to get a lot of things to make it a really robust movement to really
Right.
help the athlete grow and develop.
That is awesome. And that is done in addition to barbell training or in place of barbell training.
In addition to, there is nothing in my program that replaces barbell training.
Yeah.
I like we're gonna load that thing, and we're gonna load
Yeah.
that thing a lot. We're gonna
Yeah.
clean, we're gonna snatch. So I even have some of my 7-footers who can do it jerking. Like I'm not afraid to train guys.
Good.
And it's a piece of the puzzle.
Okay, so this is good, man. This is what I was hoping it was going to be like, because I listened. I don't know. I listened to you do a podcast with somebody. Did you do one with Gio Grassi? Did you do one with him? I heard you do a podcast with somebody, and
I'm
that's
not
what.
sure.
Yeah. But so this is where I wanted to go with this. This is
Yeah.
good stuff. So can you talk about the barbell aspect of it? Let's talk about that, and then I want to come back to some of this stuff right here since we're on barbells. Can you talk
Yeah.
about what a week? Because I know for you guys, the season lasts so long and there's so much travel. There's a break. I know historically there's a little break after the season, and then you start back up and you go until school, and then there's a little break, I guess, and then your guys are there for the summer. So can we talk about summer weight training in the weight room and then how that transitions into the fall?
Absolutely. First of all, I want to say that my first 4 years of my career was spent in football weight rooms.
Yeah.
And so, like I wholeheartedly believe that has set what we do. And I look at these guys no different than skill position players.
Yeah.
So that I want to start that off. I think in basketball there's this stigma of like you don't load guys. Yeah, we'll go load.
Yeah.
But early summer, the guys come in. They usually have been about 2 or 3 weeks off. So I love to do a work capacity block. So it may be some pulls, maybe some EDT mixed in with some isometrics. But I'm really going to take that first 2 days to build a solid base for where I'm trying to go. I have fallen completely in love with isometric training.
Yeah.
Like I just love it, and I love to load it. One of our better players here, like he's a 5th-year guy. Like, what do you want to do? He's like, let's do split stance isos. So I turn around, and he has 120 kilos on the bar for 25 seconds. Yeah. So we want to load it, and then we move into what I call that's some capacity and like a little small basic strength. To be honest, when we get into our power movements, nothing over 3 reps for our guys. All my lifts, bench, squat, most main movers, nothing over 5, 6 reps. And then my auxiliary reps can be anywhere from 6 to 8, sometimes 10. And I'll add some eccentric tempos to build some volume.
And that's solid strength training right there.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's one of the things that I think has been really cool is to see our guys take pride in what we do. I've made Olympic lifting a badge of honor in our program. Everybody doesn't get to do it. You have to earn the right to do it. And it's amazing how the guys really work to want to be able to do it, which in a lot of programs, sometimes it doesn't go that way. But we have some guys that'll get after it, and, they enjoy it.
And so if you make them earn that opportunity, that means that they're developing the basic strength and movement patterns that are required to be successful in Olympic style lifting versus just throwing them in the gym and starting clean snatches and jerks, because that there's more to the progression. If you were around Coach Hatch long enough,
Yeah.
that you just don't start doing snatches overnight.
Yeah.
All that stuff that leads up to it.
Absolutely. So we squat, lunge, hinge, and press every day. We do it in pre-game warm-up. We do it in pre-lift. If they have an individual workout, they know when they come in the court, they have their names on the mirrors. Everybody's got a squat, lunge, hinge, and press for the day. So you think about accumulation opportunities. They're doing that 200 times a year.
Yeah.
And so, that's how you build it. Now, when we're training, we're doing under load. When we're doing pre-practice, it's not under load. It's for speed. So now there's a control component to it. And so all those little things really get us going. And I think it refines their patterns. So, in my mind, when your players leave you and go somewhere else, and now at the portal and people going places, and you got guys going pro, too, it's like, when someone leaves me, I want someone to say, that kid is proficient in the weight room. He can do everything. Yeah. And that sets them up for long-term success. And I think it gives us the best way to be successful going forward.
Yeah. And if you're doing it 200 times a year, you're stacking opportunities on top of one another and building a callus, for the lack of a better term, of how to perform multiple skills differently that ultimately lead you to high performance. And
Yes.
that's super cool. Super
Yes,
cool.
sir.
So you think y'all probably get 200 days of training a year?
Oh, more than that, I was just like, I send them home and stuff. So I like to tell them we're going to do our core list 50 weeks out of the year.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's awesome. That's
Yeah.
super. Man, it
Yeah.
fires me up.
Yeah.
All right. So when you're in the fall, and
Mhm.
because I know the rules have changed, so in basketball, it was always called pickup games.
Yeah.
And then the coaches were allowed to do, I think, some one on one and some 3-on-3 stuff.
Hmm.
How has that changed, if it has or not? And is there any time in the fall where you get time with them where there's just strength and conditioning, or do you go right into pickup games and 3-on-3 and stuff like that?
Yeah. So with the way we are with the quarter system, when we come back, we go right into it. So I don't get that freedom to do it like a lot of other people. So I have to be really, really smart with what I do in the summer to build capacity and what I
Mhm.
do when they go home to maintain what we've gained. And so when we're in that period right before, um, I have to really be smart with my training to make sure that we get better. I'm not a big maintenance guy. You have to get better. We've spent too much time in season not to get better.
Yeah. That's what a lot of NFL strength coaches tell me too, because they have those NFL players have that time off in season. They're
Hmm.
training, man. It's not
Hmm.
it's not maintenance. And in collegiate basketball, man, with academics and practice and travel and the number of games that you play weekly, if you took that time off to maintain, you're missing out on, I don't know, 20 weeks of training, I guess. I
Yeah.
don't know how long y'all seasons last, but it's got to be 4 months.
Yeah, it's at least 4 months.
So,
So,
yeah,
yeah,
so that's a lot of training. That's 16 weeks of solid training. I
absolutely.
remember in 2019, the last week of workouts that I printed out, because we made it to the championship games, we had trained for 21 weeks from the beginning of the season to the end of the season. It was a block of 21 weeks of training.
Hmm.
So that's awesome. All right.
Yes, sir.
So um, you mentioned capacity just a second ago before the fall. So when you said capacity, you meant work capacity or conditioning or
Both.
both? Yeah.
Hmm.
So how do you? All right. So I remember, when I was in like eighth grade, I tried out for basketball. And that's the extent. I think I made like 2 days. And I'd always wrestled, and so I thought, well, let me play basketball. Man, that tryout was so quick. But I remember us running suicides.
Yeah. Yeah.
How has basketball conditioning changed since the 1970s when I tried out? Like, is it any different today?
Yeah, it's a little different. It's a little different than then, but like most of my mentors and people I've been around have been doing this for a long time.
Yeah.
And so like I just feel that like as we get further and further from those guys who are legends and vets in our field and try to reinvent the wheel, we're losing a little sauce.
Yeah.
And so I always want to go back to the basics. And so, like a lot of people believe they're gonna play their way on the shape. I just don't believe it. I've watched pickup for years. No one plays as hard as they do with coaches around
Yeah.
when they're on around.
Yeah.
So for me, I like I'm a really big into sleds. I love the work capacity of it. So we push sleds early in the summer, those first 3 weeks. And then we get into stuff while I'm working with coach and we're playing 4-minute games and I'll do something to accent that. Maybe it's a lactate threshold thing, some type of different type of things to hit what they're not getting. So I'm looking at what they're doing on the court and then I'm giving them what they're not getting. So we're getting the full spectrum.
Yeah.
And so I'm lucky to have a head coach who's really great to work with. Where he's like, hey, these first 2-3 weeks, get them ready to go, and then I'm ready to go. And he just work around me. So he really gives me some freedom to kind of do what I need to do to get the guys going. And I think that makes a big difference. Just repeat sprint intervals are important. And I'll say this and I'll stick by this. There is no substitute for sprinting, high speed sprinting. I don't care what sport. There is no substitute for high speed sprinting.
Well, that was going to be my next question. Do you do any max velocity training?
Yes, sir. So at the end of the season, when we're in the spring and basketball is over, my main goals in that phase are building body composition, because that is one of the key things that's going to set you up for success. And we do a speed school every spring for 10 weeks. And we sprint a lot, and we try to get really fast.
That is awesome.
The interesting thing with basketball players, if you ever watch the NBA Combine, it probably drive you nuts. But watching them run the sprint, it's the worst thing. It's so bad. And
hockey's the same way.
Yeah, so I'm like, you're gonna learn how to sprint. You're gonna learn how to sprint fast. Like I said, I have a field sport background. Yeah. So like I've been in a lot of football weight rooms in my career, and that's something I will never leave behind. People talk about Olympic lifting versus weighted jumps versus throws or sprint. I'm like, well, I do one when I can do them all. The body and brain love variety. I'm gonna give it to it.
Yeah, that is awesome. So that means a lot, because I've been to some really good basketball games here, at the PMAC, and and it's a physical game, man. When you're watching two SEC schools play, those guys are out there trying to kill each other. It's not, it's not guys shooting threes all the time, and they're banging and they're sprinting up and down the court, and it's a contact sport, man. And so that's awesome. That is really good. All right. So now let's go back to the movement stuff. So when you load those guys in your 3-dimensional movement work, is it only done with medicine balls? Do you do like kettlebell work or those heavy sandbags? How do you, is there a progression to it? Tell me more about that.
So I use Vipers, I'll use medicine balls, I'll use Kaisers, I'll use center mass bells. If you can swing it safely, I'm going to use it. And so the one of the biggest things that I think is super important for every sport when you watch it is positional strength. Can you be strong and own positions? Yeah. So if I put you in a split stance and I bump you a little bit, can you hold that, or do you tip over? And you'll be surprised how many guys who are elite athletes who like tip over, So maybe we'll start with like a split stance lunge position or a base stance deal, and you put your arm out, and you can just take your hands and just rip it side to side really hard. And right there, you get some forces added, and that's not a fast work to hold it, and everything kind of builds into it. And then maybe from there, I add a plate to it. Then maybe I add a Viper to it, and then I move your feet around now to make it more complex, right? Different positions. And now have you moving and swinging and doing different things, different positions as you're moving. So now your body is really working together synergistically. And so now you're starting to really challenge and tax the system to what the game does.
Right.
And so that's really how you like to build it out. So when I think about, and I use this analogy, let's go back to the sphere analogy, right? Yeah. Think about a big man going for a rebound. Ball comes up, he jumps, reaches really high for that ball, right? Now, everyone say basketball specific training, don't believe in it, right? So think about a receiver running down the floor, running down the field, going to catch the ball. A DB running back, going to reach it. Softball player. How do I build that position? When I go to extend, what's going to limit me? Is the hip, is the shoulder. So how do I build mobility through the hip, through the shoulder, through the foot, to where I can get the end range there to open up my catch radius to make me a better player. And that's what I'm thinking about as I go through this.
Right. Good stuff. And you've got to be, so when that big man goes up for that rebound, there's another big man on the other team that's trying to get that ball too. So, so those two are going to be, they're not bumping each other. They're trying to knock the heck out of each other. Yeah. And you're getting knocked off balance. And then you got to come and land either on one foot. Most of the time, they're probably going to land on one foot. And if you're not strong through that ankle, knee, hip, that entire sphere, then that's how you get hurt. So I see it.
Yeah.
You're strengthening the entire kinetic chain.
Yeah. Working through fascial lines.
Yeah.
So, we talk about the going to get the ball. Maybe that's going to get the ball from a movement standpoint, maybe the loaded movement, right? The barbell is me holding this man off and getting off the floor.
Right.
One without the other doesn't work. It has to be intertwined completely. Yeah. And so that's where, the blend of movement and strength training and like really blending it and not saying that when like I'm not pressing the 5-pound dumbbell here and reaching. No, like nothing like that,
Right.
Yeah.
And no, because here's what you're talking about. You're talking about holding a heavy jerk overhead.
Yes.
Off balance.
Yes.
And you jerk it, bam. And then you've got that bar locked out, and then you got to bring your feet together, and you're holding that bar over your head locked out.
Yes, sir.
That's what and then you got to bring it down, boom, and catch it, and then drive it up again. Yes, so sir. Coach Hatch taught you all this 3D movement training?
No.
Because we all know Coach Hatch was a baller.
He was.
He wasn't just this weightlifting meathead. Coach Hatch was a big-time basketball playing cat, Hall of Famer I think Northwestern State.
Yeah. Didn't he average something like 20 rebounds a game? People don't realize that. Like he was a player, like a good player.
And he would be fired up about some basketball if he was on this podcast right now.
For sure. It's amazing, like coming through there and all the sports coming through, and like now you got these specific sports trainers. So I'm like, man, like get that out of here. Like get strong, and your field work and your movement stuff is the bridge between the two.
Yeah, and that's what I like about because people, especially there are some people who will spend an entire day giving you reasons why that you shouldn't or couldn't, and there are a few exceptions of why snatch and cleans and jerks don't have a place. Okay. But when you look at the explosive isometric contractions that take place when you rack a clean, or when you fix a snatch overhead, or when you stick a jerk overhead, and that weight comes down on you and you've got to stabilize that bar and then recover with it and hold it, you're developing again through the fascial lines some serious proprioception. It's like doing perpetations and rehab. When that bar is oscillating overhead, there's a lot that if you've never experienced it and seen it done consecutively over time correctly, there's things that you don't know that takes place while those movements are being trained. Absolutely. And so I love the fact that you're doing it. All right, now here's the last question on the nuts and bolts, and I often think about this. And basketball players jump so much, during practice and play. Do you spend any time working on improving a basketball player's jump ability, vertical jump, vertical jumping, or is that ability maxed out through play? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I'm gonna go two different routes with this, so bear with me a little bit. The first route is when we talk about the movement piece, and I've gotten to spend some time with some guys who are really into some neurological stuff, and what I've been taught and what I'm starting to believe is if my body knows that I can't land safely from higher than 12 inches, it won't give me the ability to jump higher than 12 inches. Because it's self-information, it's the brain taking care of itself. So that's something that I'm learning and working through right now. And so like we spend a ton of time on how we absorb load through clean joints. And then from there, I think with my population, as opposed to when I was a football or hockey, is basketball players rarely come in trained. So just by getting stronger, producing more force, they're going to jump better. Once I get them producing more force, then I'm going to look at them and say, where are you on the side of elastic to just being pure power, just one jump up? And then I'm like, okay, let me put you in a bucket and develop what you need. And then from there, you've seen some really good games because, like, I have a kid now he came in at 7'1", 215 pounds. He touched 12 feet on the vertex, right? Yesterday, he's 7'1", 250, and touched 11 and a half. I consider that a win.
Yeah.
And so, like, when you think of it from that standpoint, their CNSs are being primed, they're learning and they're getting better and they're getting stronger and they're going to keep improving and improving and improving. That's why I think it's so imperative those first 2 years in that program. Like, we're so developmental and mastering the basics. How do we land? Can we ankle, knee, hip flexion? Can we an extension? Can we get into it? Can we get out of it? Have we produced the ability to be raw force producing and absorbing athletes? It's really important.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. So that leads us into my next round of questions about young players. You mentioned young players. And I know that kids get locked into some serious basketball organizations when they're young, and they ain't no telling how many games they play. I guarantee a kid could probably play close to, I'm going to guess 100 games because my boys played probably close to 60 games when they were young in baseball. They would play school ball, and then they would play summer ball and fall ball. And, you're looking at close to 60 baseball games for kids. So I'm sure basketball can get up there. So how much time do you think those guys spend on general and specific strength during those formative years while they're playing all of those games?
Coach, I think very little.
Little to none, yeah.
I get these guys, and no offense to anybody who listens, but like, yeah, China's like, hey, he jumps 42. I'm like, I've seen 40. 42 is crazy. You know what I mean? Like, if you've ever seen it, you're like, okay, or like, exactly. Or like, no, he squats 405. I'm like, look, man, I've never had a freshman come in, in those parameters, right? And so it's they come in, they've done basketball, and they're really dysfunctional in basketball positions, and they're great compensators. And the ones who do come in who've trained, you're like, they stick out like a sore thumb. You're like, oh yes, I got one, So it's very far and few in between.
So what's your process with those guys?
Yeah. The most important thing for a freshman here is day 1 and 2. And that's where we go through a detailed evaluation. Our sports med staff here, I got Dom, our sports trainer, I got PT Deb, are really good with their stuff. And I have my own personal evaluation that I do that's centered around squatting, lunging, their foot, their big toe, ankle, hip, T-spine, and I will break them down and I will see what's going on. I won't program until I've seen that. Yeah.
Do you get a lot of transfers?
No, Stanford's not a place that easy to get into.
Yeah.
But at Towson, at Towson Southern Miss, man, we got them all the time. So like, I'm used to that world. It's just been the last few years I haven't gotten many.
Yeah, I have a former assistant, Jake Riedel, who's at Army, working at West Point with the football team. And so I asked him, do y'all ever use the portal? And he was like, no. Not many transfers getting into West Point. So
yeah, we got 2 transfers right now.
Yeah.
So
so academically, it's tough.
It's a monster. Like finals time, as most schools at finals times, you have your dead week or whatever. Like finals time around here, it's serious.
Yeah.
Like kids are stressed, and you see it in their speeds on the VBT. You see it on their speeds when they're in practice. Like you have to adjust to it.
Yeah.
And that was something for me. I had never been to an academic school before. Like I'm like, yo, we're here to play basketball. Like in my mind, I'm thinking basketball, but here, like these kids are like, one of my kids is literally working on a cure for cancer. So it kind of really changes your idea about the group of people that I'm working with. One of my former players he's like, I'm gonna be the president one day, and I actually believe him. Like this is
Yeah.
a different
Yeah.
type of
Yeah.
kid. You know what I mean? But yeah.
So he at LSU, places I've been, it was school first, football second.
Mm-hmm.
But there, it's school first, basketball second. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, special
Yeah.
kind. All
Yes,
right.
sir.
So you talked about some, some stuff along the sports science line. You've touched on that. How closely do you work with the sports science staff, or do you do all of that yourself? And then what are some of the metrics that you might track?
I do about 90% of it. Tyler Friedrich does a
Yeah.
lot of the back end computer stuff. Dude's a whiz. I'm really
Yeah.
appreciative of him.
He
And he
spent a
puts
little
stuff.
time in Baton Rouge as an
Yeah,
intern.
we figured that out maybe like year two. Like, yo, wait, what? So
Yeah.
kind of put two and two together. But he's like
Sharp,
super
sharp,
smart.
super smart.
Yeah, yeah. And so from a metric standpoint, we have connects on. So
Okay.
you have like mechanical load, which is like your intensity of stop and starts, and and physio load, which is more distance covered and speed that you cover the distance. And so I think one of the things that I've been able to do uniquely here is develop a great relationship with my head coach.
Mm-hmm.
So I will meet with him pretty often, and I will map out the week with him what we want practice to look like from a load, from a contact standpoint, technical, tactical standpoint. And so we have practices. So we have teaching practices, which are our low days where it's probably not as competitive, but really where you're supposed to be, how do you get there, but with some pace. It kind of has an aerobic component to it for conditioning. And then, our medium and high practices look similar on paper, but our medium practices get more half court, full court stuff. With a little bit more contact. A lot of times in basketball, coaches will be like, "Hey, let's get in the half court and take some breaks, take the break off them a little bit, and kind of let them rest."
Yeah.
And it's like, well, like you do realize on the half court, it's all shortcuts, stopping and starting, so that's pretty intense.
Yeah. A lot of acceleration, deceleration.
Absolutely. So we have that, and then when we go to like level 3, it's like full competitive type things, and that's just a normal full like let's get after it. And so we will have green, orange, and red days. And so early on, me and coach worked out a system like, hey, let's not have 2 red days right here. Let's build, then let's stack. And then let's prepare to make sure we're ready to play 3 games at 3 days at some point in time in the season. And so we use all those metrics. Coach really likes bar graphs so he can see stuff really quickly. And so, like, I'll know, like, if let's say I'm looking at speed, if a kid's speed is dropped drastically, like, I know something has to be going on. Even though they don't hit top end speeds crazy often, but you can still see trends if you look close enough. And distance is another one that is always good. Coaches like to be able to say distance; it's easy for them to see, and so those are kind of some of the metrics we look at. And I've kind of like if we have a heavy mechanical load with the stop and starts, we know we need to adjust at certain points and times. But it's a really good deal where I can help manage things and be a part of the process to make sure we're getting the most out of our guys. And for me, it's like I want him to be able to go as hard as he wants every day, but maybe just the duration of it has to change.
Yeah. That's I like that, and I like the color coding it and bar graphs. That's the same thing that I've experienced with our coaches, that if you give them colors, green, orange, and red, or green, yellow, and red, and bar graphs, they always understood that better than all types of line graphs and stuff like that. So
Absolutely. Give them the meat and potatoes.
yeah, macros.
Yes,
And
yes.
and then just fill in the gaps with now in football, you have all the assistant coaches for the positions, and that's who I tried to deal with. I never wanted to go to the head coach unless I had to, so I would go talk to the assistant coaches, and they would make those micro adjustments during individual periods and 7-on-7 and 1-on-1s with the O-line, D-line and stuff like that. We would, back off guys in that way. And so they would be ready for the team periods or scrimmages and stuff like that. So that's how I kind of handled it here.
Yes, sir.
Now, you have experience and, you have vast experience at a lot of different levels in the NC2A. Okay. And you've worked with men and women's sports, from skill-based sports to more, physical, contact sports for men and women.
Mm-hmm.
How would you differ or not differ your approach to training the men and women in the different sports?
Oh. To be honest, I don't change a whole lot. When I look at the human body, I see nuts and bolts and angles.
Yeah.
Now, when I look at the psyche, I see something that's different that I have to address differently. I wholeheartedly believe in getting anyone who touches a barbell with me strong and get you to be a clean mover. So whether it's been volleyball or men's basketball or football or hockey, we're all trained with the basic lifts, getting good at them. I think with the female sports over my time, my biggest thing with female athletes is getting them comfortable being under load, understanding it's okay to be strong and it's going to be good for you, and building their confidence in the weight room. And so I've done some things that are kind of quirky, but I feel like it works. So like maybe early on, like first, if I get a job and I have a female team that maybe hasn't trained as intensely as I would like to, sometimes it's intimidating to see right on the bar. That's just a flat out truth. And that's the same for some basketball guys. And so I use different ways to get them used to seeing right on the bar. The barbell glute bridge, I will load that sucker up over time, and they'll have 4 or 5 plates on there, and they get to the point where they kind of just like relaxing and saying like, oh, I got 245s on this bar, and it just makes it a little bit more easy for them to see it. And that's male and female athletes, and I think that's more dealing with the psyche. So much of what people think about weight room, they want to know X and O's and nuts and bolts, but touching and adjusting kids' mindsets is equally as important, if not the driver for the success that happens with the nuts and bolts of everything else.
Yeah, that is exactly right.
So, building that confidence and then making them want to train and like enjoy the process. Maybe you have a female athlete who's gaining a little weight and she's like, look at the scale. Like, no, don't look at that. Look at this. Or maybe it's a deal where it's a track athlete that's a male. Like sprinters and their body weights can be something. Like I gained 5 pounds and now I'm running slow. Like you just put on 5 pounds of lean muscle. Like it should be. You just make the motor bigger. So giving them a full understanding of what they're doing. I think the most important thing for me is to like, I don't want you to come in here and just train. I want you to come here and understand what you do. Understand what you do and why you do it. And I feel like when you understand what you do and why you do, the intent can be driven up because now there's a purpose and objective to what is going on. I mean, you get a Tennessee, you gave me a Tennessee, I can't remember. It's like a objective plan for teaching. And I've used that to this day.
The Tennessee instructional model.
Yes, sir. It's actually on my desk in my office right now, and the objectives for the day. Yeah. You gave it. So it's on my desk, and I actually went over my interns yesterday, and like, did we have an objective for today, or did we just want to come and lift weights? The objective of today is we're gonna move the barbell fast on Olympic level. So you're going to load it up and move cleanly with some heavy weights. Then we're going to go and we're going to jump with great intent velocity, and we're going to get really poppy, right? And then we're going to go, we'll hit these auxiliaries, we're going to put some size on.
Yeah.
And now they're understanding what the process is.
Yeah. And so so for those that were not education majors, I was an education major. And so the thing that they taught at the Tennessee Tech University, it was called the Tennessee Instructional Model, and it was drilled into our heads. And, we would have people come in and we would do lessons and lesson plans and mock classrooms. In fact, my first presentation was in front of a group of high school kids, and they had a camera, sitting in front of me. So I was a nervous wreck, man. And the kids were like, "Hey, we got this. We do this all the time." And the kids from the locals high school would come over and they'd pay those kids to sit and let us teach them. And so it was drilled into my head in every lesson and every time I do staff development. And that's where you pick that up. That was in our in-service training that we
Yes, sir.
would do at the beginning of each semester with the staff. And that was the Tennessee instructional model. And that's what it's always about. You got to give them an objective that they're going to accomplish every day. And that's awesome, man. That's cool.
Yes,
Super
sir.
cool.
At the top of all our lifts in the top left-hand corner, there's an objective for every day of every lift.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Awesome. So you were paying attention while
Oh yeah, more than you know, more than you know.
That's awesome.
Yes, sir.
All right. So let's go back to the Olympic lifting. I got a question because a lot of people say, and there are some people that can't do it. I've had guys that couldn't do because of their anthropometrics, long levers, or what was worse is to have a long upper arm and a short lower arm. So when you have these long levers or long levers coupled with shorter levers, what is your thoughts on doing Olympic lifts with 7-foot guys and stuff, long levered guys?
Yeah. First thing I'd say is they aren't fragile. If you ever watch the basketball game and watch those big dudes, I don't like to talk about down there, or if you ever watch the one-on-one and they start to holding us to getting each other and like really guard, it's this is gonna sound weird, but it's like a cornerback who can't use his hands.
Yeah.
And so it's a very physical, demanding type thing. But I find what fits them.
Yeah.
So like what variation of list fits you? And this is maybe because of where I came through. But like one of my pet peeves is just seeing clean on a sheet. It's like, what kind of clean? Because there are lots of different cleans. So it's like we're not like, so everyone, maybe you clean from the hang, maybe from blocks, maybe from the floor, depending on what you're going to do. If you're taller than 6'3", I'm putting you on blocks automatically just because it just makes most sense.
Yeah. Raises the bar up. Yeah.
Yep. So put you in a more advantageous position to have an optimal pull. And then from there, we really hammer the triple extension piece. And I love to take triple extension with clean pulls and take guys through this thing where they see how the Olympic lifts are transferred to sport. So we do a clean pull, right? Everything we do off the floor starts with a clean pull. I stole that from a great guy. But and then from there, I tell them, I said, all right, I want you to do a clean pull very slowly from with no bar. I want you to take your hands from over your head. I say, what's that? They go, a vertical jump. This is why we're doing this. We want to have great vertical power. Force goes down, bounce goes up, and that's what we're going to do. So when we do this, whether you're moving 5 pounds or 5,000 pounds, you're going to move with maximal intent and violence. And the good thing I love about the lifts that people don't always talk about, it gives you a really good peek into how kids learn.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some guys are kinesthetic. Some guys are visual. Some guys need both. So I can usually tell coach by week 4, hey, like this is how so and so learns best. So when we teach, what I teach, we do it. I do it. They watch me. Then I have them do it. Then they watch their partner and they coach their partner through it. And so it's a constant refining process. So they're getting the mental reps as they're coaching, and they're getting the work through as they get going. And that's really how I like to attack it. And I love the intent piece. I've gotten arguments with people about like met ball throws versus Olympic lifts, and I said, show me somebody throw a 225-pound met ball, and I'll be sold on it. It just is what it is. Like nothing produces that much with that much weight.
Yeah, and you're exactly right about how guys learn. And we had guys that were struggling learning things, and I would say, I'm going slow compared to how your position coach is going to teach you. And so you have to learn, listen, pay attention, learn, because when you get out on the football field, it's going to happen so much faster. And if I can't teach you to clean, then you're going to struggle playing football in the Southeastern Conference. So, we got to have eye control, and you have to listen, and they got to let their defenses down, because people only like doing what they're good at. And if you get a 6'9" guy coming in and he's a great player, but he doesn't look good in the weight room, he's going to be reluctant to doing some of those things. And so it's interesting to hear you say that, because it's the same way in football.
Yes, sir.
I would tell him, say, Coach, this guy's going to struggle, and you're going to have to go slow, because he doesn't learn quite as well as some of the other guys. And, we had a guy that you would say, if we were doing snatches, you have the snatch warm up before snatches. And he would look at you and say, which warm up do I have today? And the kid's been in the program for 8 months, it's clean grip warm up. Here it is. And you're having to repeat it every day over and over and over again. And those guys struggle.
Yes,
So let me ask you this. We're getting close to the end. I got a couple more questions I want to ask you. And I've asked this question once before during the podcast. You've coached in the Northeast, you've coached in the Southeast, and you've coached in the West. You've coached all over the country at different levels. Do you see a difference in athletes and how they train, how they move, and what they've been exposed to based on geographics? Are the athletes in the Northeast different than they are in the South, and are the guys in the West different than they are? How does that go? What do you think?
Kids in the South, they do it with a level of violence that you just don't see anywhere else. And the closest you see that is in the Midwest. Like, they're big, strong dudes want to rip it and grip it and go. The East Coast is got a little grittiness to it, and the West Coast is very refined and skilled. And so, whereas when I was at Towson, the East Coast, I spent a lot of time teaching technique and not intent. Here, I've had to really tap into like intent, and they think it's funny. It's that, like, I've sort of like violently pulled the bar. Like they think it's funny, and I'm like, yeah, but when you do it my way, the bar moves a lot faster, don't it? I don't need the VBT to tell me that that's fast. I can hear the bar and tell you that thing is moving, And so, like, that is the difference in the eras. The South is just different. You have big, strong kids that sometimes I've noticed aren't as technically sound, but they're used to working.
Right.
So that's kind of been my geographical breakdown of what I've seen. But what I've learned is, and I'm shout out to Coach Hatch with this one. Like, the lesson is only as good as a teacher. Everywhere I've been able to get them to do what I want them to do, and it's never been a bad exercise or a bad anything. It's been, can you teach it? If it's bad, you probably just can't teach it. Right. And if they can't get it, it's probably your fault that you didn't get it through to them. And so that has been the biggest thing that, in my opinion, like, I take extreme ownership of like what we do and how we do it and how we go about it. And so we're going to be very, very good at everything. And I'm going to make sure, if you're having time struggling with it, hey, come on in later. We're going to get this thing right. But we're not going to just cancel the plan, do something that's easier, right, and then give you excuse for it. We're going to learn how to do the hard stuff.
Yeah. Our podcast guest 2 weeks ago, Ben Anikione, who's at Washington State University, he talked about that also, said the same thing, that if kids are doing something wrong, it's a reflection on you, because you didn't do a good enough job explaining what you're in. He talks about chaos, adding structure to chaos is teaching.
Yeah, no doubt.
Great podcast. All right. So how do you add value to the weight room and your program?
You know, I think in my career, like the people I've seen um, do it, like you guys have been so much bigger than just the strength coach. Um, I've actually like I've moved my office into the weight. I have an office. I set up a table and a chair in the weight room because the food's in here. The food's in here, so the guys come through. So I get more context with the guys. Um, I like to know what coach's message is, and I want to reiterate that. And I want to create a similar environment in here. But there's no depth chart in here, obviously, so it's a chance for everyone to kind of thrive. But I wholeheartedly consider college basketball, college athletics my mission field. I'm here to impact individuals that I work with every day in a positive way, whether it's a lunch, whether it's a talking to. Sometimes loving a kid is putting your foot up their behind because that's what they need, and sometimes it's giving them a shoulder to cry on. And so I really, really believe in the young man that I have. Not only have young men, and like it's a special population. Like the guys you've worked in your career, now people could say they told them what to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I'm one of the few people that are going to tell some of these guys. Like I had a guy that was drafted pretty high recently. He's like, no one's ever like told me no before.
Yeah.
I'm I'm telling you, you're not. I'm telling you, like you're special, but at the end of the day, this ain't gonna be enough. You have to be more than a basketball player. Who are you as a man? Where are you going with life? Tell me, what are your plans past all basketball? When the basketball stops dribbling, who are you going to be? And I feel like that is where I add the most value to where the guys, they can come to me at any given point in time, and I'm here. I tell coach a little test of this. I'm kind of a Swiss Army knife. I'm here when the flat tire, when the girlfriend breaks up, when I get enough playing time, they get too much playing time. I'm kind of that sounding board, and I think that's so important in these developmental years because like people see them on this pedestal. I'm like, I'm not looking at your draft status, your stats, and who you're gonna be. I'm looking at you, and I'm here to develop you, and that's what I'm gonna do.
And that's what I liked about the weight room. It wasn't to me about wins and losses. It was about development and them being a better person from having been a part of that program. And
absolutely,
we have to teach guys how to flush the toilet.
I remember,
I mean, it's life skills. It goes far beyond what happens on the playing field.
Absolutely. Whether it's opening doors for women when they walk through, or watching your language when women are around. It's all those little things that sometimes I don't think about. I have a deal with most of our guys here. Like, I want them to try one new food a month. I said, while you're playing ball and you're special, like people are gonna eat with you, but when you go to the business world and you go to that meeting, and that guy across from you makes $9 billion, you eat what he's eating, so you go eat this couscous. And so like getting them used to that.
And you're not going to lick your plate when you're done.
Exactly. And so like those are just like the little bitty life skills that I'm trying to impart into our guys a little bit,
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yes, sir.
Any advice for young coaches?
Yeah. Who you work for early in your career means everything. And I want to go detail. It's not where you work. It's who you work for. Work for good people who have longevity, who are where you want to be one day. And as you go through that, don't watch just what they do on the floor. Watch who they are as people. And I think that shows you a lot about why they are where they are. I remember asking all of you guys, like, how did you get where you got? I've asked that question everywhere I've been. And it's always been, no, I was just working. It's never like, hey, I was going to be the best. It just kind of happened that way. And so that's a really important piece. And secondly, I would say, you don't have to know everything in the world, but what you do know it in and out, backward and forth, and do it with confidence and coach intent, and you can't go wrong.
Yeah. Awesome. Powerful words right there. Powerful words. Well, our time is up, man. I appreciate it. I can't thank you enough for joining us, and it was better than what I anticipated. because we got to go really in depth in training. I appreciate you opening up and being frank and being transparent and, talking some good training with us. And the last thing that I want the podcast to be is a football strength and conditioning podcast. Our goal, is to spread the word across all sports. And I'm slowly getting there. And because, when I was a coach, it didn't matter if it was basketball or baseball, softball, swim, dive. I wanted everybody to train well and to be successful. So I appreciate it. You can follow Coach on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at mchat24, correct? At
Yes, sir.
mchat24. Please do me a favor and tell Tyler Friedrich that I said hello. I saw him on y'all's website. I didn't know he was there.
Yeah.
But please do me a favor and tell Tyler that I said hello.
Yes, sir.
And
Will
again,
do.
thank you very much for coming on today.
Thank you. It means a lot.
Thank you. All right. This brings us to the end of today's podcast. Please remember to subscribe and share this podcast with your friends. This was a great one. For more information about the Moffitt Method Speed, Strength, and Conditioning Program and our new one-to-one program, please visit our website, themoffittmethod.fit, or email us at info@themoffittmethod.fit. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.